I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 through the 21, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low key. I'm sipping low key and honest, find a rider. I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Lady Mag NUFC and a little bit of the old Goosebumps there, the old version of Goosebumps. Jeez, that was a trip down memory lane. That's for sure. But look, we're back. We're back Sunday evening, talking a little bit of transfers. Welcome everyone that piling in right now. Boys, how are we after? Let me just check. Yeah, still 3 points in the pocket. Yeah. How are we feeling after the big win against Fulham? That's come to you first, fella.
Coming to me, yeah. We spent an hour and a half talking about it last night, yeah. So I'm still good, Pete. 24 hours on or so. Yeah. Today it's just myself and the little boy. My wife was at work, playing a bit of FIFA Ultimate Team. So we're experts. We're in the pros now at this stage at the game. But yeah, no, good day today, and looking forward to this. Talking a bit of transfers. But Chris, how are you? How was your night out?
Mate, it was brilliant, and do you know what? The lads did not let me down because I'm sat in my mate's living room, and I was thinking, "Oh God, please don't lose this game because they're just gonna." I was got it from all angles. They were all there baiting and praying, and picking up on every word I said. And like at one point, Anthony Gordon controlled the ball, and it bounced a little bit, and then he got his shot off, but it hit the bar. And I was going, feet. And they were going, yeah, they've all got feet. All the footballers have got feet, Chris. What are you talking about? And I was like, oh, shut up. Because they knew the goal was coming. And the relief when that first goal went in was just amazing. And then obviously Dan Burn then scored. And then Louis Miley, said, I've been telling you about this boy. But yeah, so they all switched off at that point. And then it was all then about Everton. And I must admit, I thought, Burnley could get something here. And fair play to Everton, they did the job as well. They got the job done. So we were all very happy come the end of the footy. And then we all started playing a bit of poker. And the drinks were flowing and it all got a bit mad. But great performance yesterday. Great night. Thank you very much. And yeah, been looking forward to coming on here and talking a bit of transfers because I think we need to start thinking about those transfers.
We do.
We do. Sure do, and we will. And we won't go into this now, but there's already a good question, Chris, because Pete and myself went off on a bit of a tangent last night. I don't know if you caught up yet, but we want to give our backstory of how we became Newcastle fans. So you'll have to go give yours now as well. So we'll mark that question there from Leon to come to that later on.
Definitely. That's a bit boring, isn't it? Really.
Yeah,
but anyway, carry on. Yeah.
Go for it. I'm quite happy to go off on a little bit of a tangent again today. It's becoming a bit of a norm for us. But look, everyone in the chat, welcome. Housekeeping, of course. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the likes. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching. As we hit the button, bang on the money. Keep following all things Loaded Mag NUFC as we bring the content to you, and we'll continue to do it certainly throughout the month of January, and we are going to be extremely busy. So massive thanks to you for that. Now, I have to say, I'm going to start with this because otherwise Phil on Twitter will kill me. Okay, because he keeps reminding me all the time. I keep saying we're gonna do it, and we don't. But massive shout out to NUFC women today, 11-3 smashing. Okay, with AFC Pride, and that now leaves them second in the table, just below the Liverpool Feds. If I'm right, I think 3 points behind, marching well up that league. So yeah, big up to NFC women, NUFC women. Brilliant stuff. Keep smashing it up.
Is it only the top team that gets promoted?
Yes, I looked at the league and it's got that cut off there for the top team. It was a little bit like last season when they got promoted. It was only one team and they're fighting it out. I think it might be, was it Burnley? Can't remember which team they're fighting it out with, but obviously NUFC women nicked it and got promoted. It looks like they're well on the way to potentially doing the same again this season. A great start. So I had to get that out there. Phil, I hope you're happy with that. We will do some reminders later on in the season and as we move on. Look, first and foremost, this season or this January window has had a lot of question marks, boys. A lot of people have been saying, we need to sign players. We need to bring in new fresh impetus in the team. Certain positions have been called out, but then there's been sections of the fan base that have been calling out FFP. Can we spend? Are we able to spend? Now, just to start this off in this kind of discussion, Mark Douglas the other day put out a really good piece for the iPaper. And one of the things that he touched on was, is there money to be spent? Now, not only is he talking about Calvin Phillips, who we'll come to later on in the show, he's said that there's 3 positions highlighted potentially. And football finance experts said with regards to FFP, there is wiggle room for Newcastle United. And they've put a little quote on there, 30 million spend wouldn't touch the side. So therefore, that kind of question is kind of been squashed really from Mark Douglas in his piece. So if you haven't read that, give that a read because it is a good read. And that kind of opens it up really because Newcastle United, in our opinions, am I doing a straw here? We all agreed that we need to invest.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Showing it up. Now, with that in mind, the key to this show tonight is where do we, in your opinion, need to sign? So if we highlight what Mark Douglas has said and go with 3 positions or 3 signings that we're looking to make, where, in your opinions, and I'll come to you, Chris, with this to start with, where in your opinion do we need to target? So if I'm giving you 3 positions that Newcastle United could sign in, what 3 positions are you going for and why?
I've got 4 in my head, so I'm going to partially cheat here. And also I'm thinking of what Eddie Howe, what he said he wants, and certainly what he looks like he wants as well. So I'm going to merge 2 of the positions, and you'll probably see why. So I'll start first of all, and I'll say that I think we need a goalkeeper. I've been banging this drum now for a few weeks, even when Pope was fit. Yes, I thought it'd be the summer, but now with Pope being out till April, I think that gets fast forwarded because we've got Martin de Bravkerd in there, who back in the day has been a good servant, good reliable goalkeeper. But I do think we need to upgrade. But I also believe that we need to upgrade Nick Pope anyway. And I think now, if he's out for the next 5 months, now.
Oh, this is hangover kicking in.
Yeah, it definitely is. He was so intrigued in the conversation, he's just stopped.
He's shocked. He's read something.
Stopped himself. Yeah, definitely. But look, he was in mid flow, so we'll cap it there. And Daz, we'll come to you. Chris has said he had 4 positions in his mind.
He's back. He's back.
Sorry. Sorry, that's my internet playing off. Yeah, I can't remember. Well, I don't know what you've heard, but I basically said the number 1, and the reason being is I think that we need to look to upgrade on Nick Pope, and now that Nick Pope's out till April, I think now is the perfect time to bed in a new keeper for the following season, thinking ahead. So that would be my first position. My second position would be a saying that I've got 5 positions now. Right, my second position as a priority would be a striker come right winger, and they're the two that I was going to merge. I think we need a right-sided winger who can either replace Miggy Almiron or certainly challenge him, because with Jacob Murphy out for a period of time and then not being reliable in terms of his fitness. I think we do need another right wing option. And if the right winger can play up front as well, ideal. And that's probably what Eddie will look for. He's probably wanting a player who can play across a few positions across the front three. So a striker come right winger, I would say, bit in the Isak mould, where Isak is a striker, but he can also play left wing. We need one of those for the right wing. So that would be the other one. Now my last position, I still feel that we're lacking a little bit in central midfield. So it's whether or not I pick a central midfielder or a centre back. So I'm still gonna say, I think, thinking of January, I'm still gonna say I think we need a central midfielder. I know people will say we've got loads of central midfielders, and I understand that, but I still think we need that specialist number 6 role, or a person who's different to the players that we've got at the minute. Because at the moment we have a selection of midfielders who are all quite similar, in my opinion. The only one who is different, I would say, is probably Joe Willock, in that Joe Willock's role is very box to box. You could argue Sean Longstaff's is a little bit like that, but I think Joe Willock's more attacking than Sean Longstaff. But in Bruno and Joe Linton and Miley and Anderson, even, I think they're quite similar. I'd like someone with a little bit more attacking threat. Look at Dominic Szoboszlai at Liverpool, that kind of player where, they are box to box, but when they're going forward, they're very, very threatening. And I don't think we have that central midfielder who is very threatening going forward. And I think if we had that in the team, or even someone who could allow Bruno to do that role and he doesn't have to concentrate on his defensive side of the game as much. Because at the moment, Bruno, he's playing in the 6 and he knows that he can't kind of, showcase himself or let himself go, so to speak, going forward, because he knows he's got his defensive responsibilities. And I do think that affects the team quite a bit. So yeah, they would be my 3: a striker come winger, a number 1, and a number 6/number 8 who can bomb forward and really cause a threat going forward as well. They would be my 3.
Okay. That's...
Yeah, I won't go into as much detail as Chris, because I kind of said it a few times before, and I'm crossing over what you were saying, Chris. So first up, it's goalkeeper hands, Mickey Mouse hands behind me there, and behind us all, the gloves out. We need a goalkeeper. That's my first signing. Second signing would be a goalkeeper. Third signing would be a goalkeeper. We need a goalkeeper, full stop. And that's where you start from. After that, I'd like a striker. A striker, like Chris said, that can play out the wing as well, so we can mix and match and get game time. But they're the 2 players I'd be looking to spend our cash on, because we're not going to have an awful lot of cash. Strikers are always expensive. A number 1 goalie that to take us for the next however many years is going to be expensive as well. That's but spread out over a number of years of the contract, we might be able to do something there. So there's the 2. Then after that, I like the thoughts of a number 6 on loan kind of thing, because we saw what Bruno can do yesterday when he had a bit of space, a bit of freedom, and pushed up the pitch a bit. So someone to unleash him there a bit would be good. And I think more so this summer, then we'll stick with where centre backs what we have now, and we know that we've got preferred option is Botman and Char, but Dan Byrne can move in there. Even Kraft Koo, who had a great game yesterday, could move in there if called upon as well. But so yeah, that's my main target is a goalkeeper and a striker, because that's I don't want to get greedy. But after that, it's loans, so that's where I go for.
Yeah, okay. Right. Interesting.
What about you, Pete?
Yeah, goalkeeper for sure. Number 6 for sure, and then for me, I'd probably say right winger stroke striker. So you can kind of leave that however you want it, sort of whichever one that could get in. Ideally, like you boys said, both. So I think we're kind of aligned there on the players that we want to kind of get in. Now, just looking at this is ultimately what we've got available based on those positions. Okay, so we kind of set it out on the tactics board, and I've kind of put the players in the positions where they're predominantly played this season. So you know, some of them are not played at all, but we've got obviously our goalkeeper situation, we've got our right winger situation, striker situation, and then on midfield. But obviously, in terms of the number 6 playing in that position, although we've said that Miley can play there, he's actually played most of his football, if not all of it, as a number 8. Certainly competitive wise. So that's why I've put him there. And you can see straight away that this is why that number 6 is important, because really only Bruno can play that particular role. But if you're looking for an absolute defensive midfielder, you probably take Bruno out of that as well and put him here. And we don't actually have it. And I think that's why it's more important, really important. Now, a few people have mentioned, boys, you know, Eddie Howe doesn't play with that traditional defensive midfielder number 6. But in your opinion, is that something that we need in this team? Do you think that we need to get that number 6, or do we just need to get another central midfielder in?
Well, a few people have already said in the chat, and it's been said over the last number of games, our away form. If we had a defensive-minded midfielder, or more defensive-minded midfielder that could track back or stay back, I always call that role, number 6 role, the David Batty role. Someone that's just going to sit there and mop everything up, especially when we're playing away, would take the pressure off our defense and whoever might be standing in goal that day. So yeah, I can't remember your question, but that's my answer anyway, Pete.
The question is that do we need that defensive midfielder, that number 6 that we don't traditionally play with under Eddie Howe? You know, do we need? Do you think, in your opinion, we need that? And I think from what you've said, you know, like you called it the David Batty role, you think we do. Are you of the same mindset, Chris?
Do you know what I was just about to say? I think Daz has hit the nail on the head there, because for me, it's not even necessarily an out and out number 6. It's more a defensive minded midfielder. So somebody who naturally is more defensive. So I agree with what Daz has said, because if Eddie Howe doesn't play with a traditional number 6, someone who will just sit there and not venture forwards, I get that. But even if it's a player who, I mean, look at Casemiro with Man United. Look how many goals he scores. He gets forward, but predominantly he is a defensive midfielder. That's his job, but he does it so well. And yeah, those kind of players, they cost money. They're not cheap. But we have a lot of attack-minded midfielders, and you putting it up there like that, Pete, clearly highlights that. And I suppose a question back to you both, a dead quick one. Do you think if we were to bring in that specialist defensive midfielder or defense-minded midfielder, do you think that we would have to sacrifice one of those? Because for me, I think we probably would. But I suppose which one of the 7 would you be sacrificing?
Yeah, we touched on this.
Yeah,
we touched on it before. I mean, what I will say is that we take this man out of the situation, because we don't have.
He's not there, is he?
So, for the benefit of this season, for the second half of the season, he's really a non-factor. And you can argue that Joe Willock is probably that as well, because he hasn't really kicked the ball for us this season. But if I'm honest with you, if you look at that, you probably don't have to sacrifice anybody, in my opinion. I don't think we do. I just think that we are going to need to maybe move the team around slightly to incorporate a number 6 into this team. So we're looking at that situation is that, you know, if you and look, we've talked about it for weeks. I mentioned it after the Spurs game. Daz has mentioned it tonight. It's clearly something that we're all thinking that away from home, we need that player to sit in this position and just block up play, stop people running in, because we're seeing Bruno pushing up here and he's getting exposed in and around this area here. And that's where you go back and watch that Tottenham game, the amount of counterattacks where they were pushing, either winning the ball, little 1-2s in this little area here, and then running into this space, and they were just completely like free. Nobody running from these areas from the wings inside. They were just completely just destroying us, and we had nothing in there, but we need someone that's just going to sit in that spot there and just break up play and stop people from playing. And I do think we need that, and maybe that moves Bruno out to here, as an alternative, so he's able to get forward more. At home, Bruno will play here. The defensive midfield is off. Maybe the defensive midfielder comes on for Bruno and gives him a little bit of a rest. He's played a hell of a lot of football this season, and then shores up shop for us and sees out the game for us. Are we able to play that? But
Pete, do you think it's significant at all that when you look at the right-hand side of that midfield, so you've got Longstaff, Tonali and Miley, and then you look at the left-hand side of that midfield, which is Joe Linton, Anderson, Willock, do you think there's any significance at all that all of those three left-sided midfielders, they've all played at some point in the left wing position, but none of the right side of those midfield players have ever played on the right wing?
It's an interesting one. I would say because of the fact that they are runners, that helps. So they've got a lot of pace to burn. Joe Linton's fast, Elliot Anderson's fast, and let's be honest, that is Elliot Anderson's natural position here on the left-hand side. And Joe Willock has got a lot of pace to run into this area. They like to run at players. These two, I would say, are slightly different. These are runners in terms of they cover every blade of grass, but they're not players that have attributes that can play on a wing. Whereas Joe Linton can. We saw Joe Linton late on in the game against AC Milan, sitting out wide here, getting the ball played to him, and he was just driving into this area. He did it against Tottenham, and driving into this space here, which got him his goal. Like, he is really good at doing that. Joe Willock, we look at the goal where Bruno scores the winner at Leicester. He literally runs from this position, uses his pace. He leaves Tielemans for dead and comes in, gets the ball into the box, and Bruno scores. So they've got that in their locker. That's their attribute. These are not natural like runners. They're not pacey. Like, they've got enough pace to get around midfield, but they're not quick, lightning quick, like some of these boys are. And I think that may be the reason where it's easy to transition into it. And let's not forget, Joe Linton for Hoffenheim played in this position in the front, in a front three. That's what he should have been signed for, not as a striker. Joe Willock has played there on occasion for Arsenal, when he was at Arsenal before, but is a central midfielder, but he's got the attributes to do it. So that's, in my opinion, that's why.
Pete, there's a good point here from Bobby, and I suppose we're comparing the left side to the right side, but he says there's no Trippier on the left. We've been playing Burn there, so there's an awful lot less overlapping. But he also says then our right-sided midfielder players there, so that they're used more for balance, so they kind of cover, I suppose, when Trips has gone AWOL up the pitch, trying to connect with Miggy and overlap, and then someone has to cover.
So Trips here is normally in and around this position, and what you tend to find is Bruno in there. So we talked about the triangles before. There's your triangle set here. But if the ball breaks, what you tend to find is the Trippier is getting back in. Shaw will come over, and one of these two, whoever's playing, comes over to protect the space. That's what they're really good at. They protect that space really, really well. On the other side, it's slightly different because Bruno tends to go across to block that if Joe Linton, Gordon, whoever is not getting back. But 9 times out of 10, if Joe Linton's there, he will be there to protect that space. And that's what they're good at. They're good at doing that. And this is what Lewis Miley's come in and literally played that Longstaff role, and he's played it to perfection because he's got the attributes to do it. So no, it's an absolute spot on point, and I agree. And that's why most of the play goes down the right hand side for Newcastle. We play that way. But look, there are positions anyway. They're the ones I just wanted to touch on because they're the positions that we've kind of emphasized that we need to look at. So we need to look at those positions. Who, in your opinion, or should, not will, but should come in first as our first signing if we sign anyone in January? I'm opening it up.
Goalie. goalie has to come in first for me. It's we know Pope's going to be out for, is it, I don't know the exact date, but March, April,
they reckon.
and yeah, and like coming back as well, something like that, you could get a reoccurrence and he could be gone for the season, and it's a position that, if Pope hadn't got injured in the summer, I would have liked us to look at anyway, because I think we need a complete overhaul of the goalkeepers on the books, but they can't all be done in one swoop either. So for me, the keeper has to be the one. It's the most urgent of all the positions for me.
Are you the same, Chris?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Daz. The only one, I suppose, which for me is close to it, would be the right winger / striker. They're the two positions that really stand out for me at this present moment. The number 6 and the right-sided centre-back are two that I think over time I would like to replace. Like at the moment, Fabian Schär's doing fine. I think Bruno Guimaraes, is a fantastic player and he's doing the job. If we lose either Fabian Schär or Bruno Guimaraes, then you start to see we're a little bit weaker. I know Jamal Lascelles has been playing there because we've lost Botman, but when Botman's back, Fabian Schär will be playing right centre back, and all of a sudden you're like, actually, this is okay. Exactly the same when Miggy Almiron's fitting 5 and then banging goals in from everywhere, and we've got Isak or Wilson up front. You're like, oh, this is fine. But when you lose one or both of those players, you go, right, what have we got to come in? And then that's when you start laughing.
You do know Botman's back, Chris, and Schär's gone now.
No, I do. Obviously, but I mean, for these last few weeks, we've not had them. Great to see Botman back, by the way. Fantastic seeing him coming off the bench. Really, really good news. But again, you're always just one player away, aren't you, from break? Like for example, we've got on the left, we've got Anthony Gordon, we've got Joe Linton, we've got Harvey Barnes, we've got Willock, we've got Anderson, we've got loads of players on that right hand side. As soon as you lose Miggy Almiron, you go Jacob Murphy, who's also out. And then you're like, ooh, who else can we play there? And that's the problem. You can't just have Miggy Almiron all the time. And boys, we've spoke, haven't we, saying, long term is Miggy Almiron the solution, really? So that's why I think it's got to be up there. And we've already touched on Pope, haven't we, in the number 1 position?
Okay, so look, we touched on the goalkeeper, so we'll have a look at that one first, because I think with regards to that, it is
and just as you do, Pete, because and I don't think this is correct what Andy said here, but we can't bring in a keeper unless we get permission from the Premier League. We have 4 keepers in our squad, which is the maximum you're allowed. And when you bring in transfers in January, you can remove people from your squad and mix and match. But I don't think it's a rule on the amount of keepers you can have in your squad. You can have.
Not that I'm aware of.
I think you have to have a minimum of 3. I think you have to have a minimum of 3, but I'm not aware that there was a maximum you could have in your squad. That would be strange, really. I mean, you should be able to have as many goalkeepers as you want. But like we said, I think it's easily fixed. I think maybe a Karius or a Gillespie gets sacrificed for a new goalkeeper coming in as one of those changes. So I think it's easily done. At the end of the January transfer window, you have to submit your new squad anyway. So I think we'll have time to get that sorted. But look, the two that have really been talked about, and I want to get your opinions on this actually, is because he's been heavily linked for a while. We've talked about him before. Mamardashvili from Valencia. We had the discussion before, and there was talks that he has been scouted, and that there was potential to get that deal done in January. He's playing at Valencia. Valencia is sort of like mid-table-ish, not having the best of seasons where they're fighting for a title, Champions League race. So I think at that point, we're in a position where we could probably get in. But the interesting one is around this man, Aaron Ramsdale, and he's been talked about more recently. I'd mentioned to you boys, I think, that Potts and Sam from 12th Man, they keep talking him up as he'd be a really good option for Newcastle. I want to get your thoughts on this. So, like, if you had the option of potentially making one of those deals, or getting one of those deals done, Who are you going for and why? We're putting it out there that we can get those deals done. Mohamed Dakhili, I don't think will be a huge expensive transfer. With Ramsdale, you've got the option potentially of a loan with an obligation to buy potentially to get that deal done. Or I think we've got the money to pay that up front. Who are you going for and why? So Daz, I'll start with you from a goalkeeper perspective.
Cool. Hopefully my intro picks up a bit. Yeah, for either option, Pete, really. For me, I like Mohamed Ashvili. Kind of learning his name now as well, so that's always a sign that it's getting serious. But I think I have to call him something else because I'll never be able to manage that every week. But yeah, he looks good in the video clips I saw. We know what Ramsdale can do. I really rate Ramsdale. I'm surprised that Arsenal dropped him and brought in the other keeper. And so, but then I suppose this other people talk about his father likes to talk as well and get involved in all the dealings. But he's a good keeper, and I rate him. But is he? He's only marginally better, maybe, or on the level with Par or with Pope. Whereas I think Mohamed Ashvili is 20. Is he 22 or 23? So he's got a long career ahead of him, and get him in, get him settled, get him up and running, and he'll be number one coming in. And when Pope comes back, it's up to Pope to battle him out to try and get back in again and see how that goes. But so that's who I'd go for, the Mohamed Ashvili from Valencia. But I'd be happy with Ramsdale on loan. A loan could be that, because that gives us the try and buy option.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, who are you going for?
Me personally, given the choice, I'd go for Mohamed Ashvili because I think he's probably a player for the future. And I mean, look at what Vicario's done at Spurs. He's come in, bit unknown. You know, he didn't have hundreds of suitors. Tottenham went in, got him, and he's made a really strong start to his Spurs career, and he's one for the future. And that's kind of where I feel that we're at now with our number one position. I feel like we need to upgrade. We need to take a punt on someone who's got, you know, the credentials. Valencia, possibly ideal, as you said, Pete, you know, mid-table, probably could do with the money, probably get him in a reasonable fee, you know, rather than going out for like an Onana and paying like 50+ million. You're going in and buying potential. And then you're giving him 6 months and going, right, you've got the gloves now until at least April when Nick Pope comes back. Hopefully he keeps hold of them, and then he gets a full pre-season with us, and then he starts as the new number one next season. That's what I would do. However, you know, whether or not the coaching staff see it that way, is he available in January? Who knows? Is there another player out there who they prefer who's not available till the summer? And in which case, I would then probably go and get Aaron Ramsdale, because him on loan would do a job. Do I see him as the future Newcastle number one for the next 3, 4, 5 years? Probably not, because Daz made a good point. I don't think he's a massive upgrade on Pope. There's elements of his game that I prefer to Pope's, but I don't look at him and think, oh, he's our first trophy winning goalkeeper. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. Who knows? But I think as well, what Eddie Howe might lean towards Ramsdale is that you kind of know what you're getting. You're getting a Premier League experienced goalie who's also internationally experienced, and I think he would probably slot into the side a lot easier than what Mohamed Ashvili would, or somebody who's never played in the Premier League before. But I think now is the time to kind of go out and look for an upgrade. That's what I would do. But again, it depends on the budget. It depends whether Mohamed Ashvili is near the top or at the top of the list. If we do go for Aaron Ramsdale, I think it will either be down to the fact that Mohamed Ashvili isn't available or isn't top of the list, or they wait until the summer when they've got a bit more money from like the Adidas deal, for example. That's what I think will spell who we go for. But I do think we'll go for someone.
Before we get your thoughts, Pete, on the keeper, I like what Bobby's thinking here is, and this is what I thought as well, Bobby. Get him in, get the Georgian connection going, and then bring in KK in the summer. I love it. I love that thinking, Bobby. Never happened, but I love it.
You say never happened, but they clearly know each other. If anyone can get him over the to the English channel, then it would definitely be Mohamed Ashford, that's for sure. But look, it's an interesting one. We've already talked about, and we kind of threw his hat in the ring a week or two ago when we talked about David De Gea, who's on a free. So you're only really paying the wages and the contract. So that's another alternative as well, of course. But if you're asking me for a short-term deal, I'd probably go out with Ramsdale. I'll probably go. Don't start that. I'll probably go in Aaron Ramsdale, and the reasons why, and this is only if I'm going for a short-term deal. If I'm going longer term, I'd go Mohamed Ashford. Mohamed Ashford is 22 years old. I think Ramsdale's still pretty young. He's 25, so he's still a young goalkeeper. He's still got a lot of time on his hands. But I just think Aaron Ramsdale, we need a goalkeeper to come in and get us playing and bring that solidity. He knows the English game. He's already secured Champions League football last season with Arsenal, so we know he can play at the top of the league. And I think there's going to be, I would like to think there's a hunger there with him. There's a hunger there to prove people at Arsenal wrong for just kind of shipping him out. And as well, he's fighting to get into the Euro squad. So for me, I'm thinking of those reasons there. If we got 6 months of quality goalkeeping out of him, and that did all of those things that I pointed out, then that would be a really, really good deal. And if it's a 6-month loan with a view to an option to buy, that works out perfectly because we don't have to then do the deal. And if there is a better goalkeeper out there, like you said, Chris, with the sponsorship money and clearly and should really have more money to spend in the summer, we'd be able to get a better goalkeeper. But if we're going long term, I'd get Mohamed Ashford for sure. But I'm of this question mark, and I think you boys have both touched on it as well, is that we don't know what Newcastle are going to go for. We don't know what they're thinking. We don't know whether they want a short-term fix or whether they're actually going to go and get their main man, the main guy, the one that they want to be, effectively the successor to Pope. And I actually think this is part of their issue right now, because I don't think it was clearly not something that they planned for, but now they've been forced into it. It's going to be really, really interesting to see where they go next and what their next move is. Like, it's really interesting, people in the chats talking about, Mohamed Ashford, and I think the consensus is that Mohamed Ashford is the one that you go for, and I think that's a natural pick. But what was really interesting, this is the one thing that I didn't know, because I wasn't quite sure on, and I can't remember who's put it. It was Iniesta Wijnaldum. Mohamed Ashford is a traditional goalie, great shot stopper, but really bad with his feet. Now, does that change people's minds there? I don't know how bad he is with his feet. I've seen a lot of him, or the bit I've seen of him when I've watched him live, it's more shot stopping than anything else. And he's very good at commanding and collecting. But I haven't seen enough of him with his feet to suggest that he's kind of top level. I don't believe he is. But if Iniesta Wijnaldum said that he is bad with his feet, does that change anything? And I'll throw that back to you boys, because clearly playing with his feet is something that is kind of a conversation within the Newcastle fan base because of some of Pope's questionable kicking over the last sort of 6 months. So does that change your mind in any way if that was true, if that is the case, what Iniesta Wijnaldum said?
I'd have to watch more of them today. The truth, I've only watched YouTube clips of them. I haven't seen them live, but yeah, it would be a question mark. They're going to be doing their scouting on whoever they bring in. I'm open to any long-term replacement. It doesn't even have to be the two names we've mentioned. I know Foxy even put another player from South America, and we know Foxy knows his stuff when it comes to South American players. So whoever they may find out there who ticks all the boxes of what they're looking for.
5 million. Woo. Dan Ashworth, where are you?
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. That wouldn't be bad. Yeah. But no, I agree with Daz. I haven't watched Mohamed Ashley for like long periods. I've only seen clips of him, and like I say, the clips I've seen, I've been impressed. But that is a factor. I think in the modern game, I think you do need a goalkeeper who is comfortable with the feet, especially when you're playing out from the back, which is what a lot of teams do now. And the big thing for me as well, Pete, is probably distribution. Like, you see some of the top level goalkeepers, like, you see Alisson doing it all the time. In fairness, you see Jordan Pickford doing it. Like, distribution is spot on. And, if you're a quick counter-attacking press inside, you need a goalie who can basically set you off, get you 40, 50 yards up the pitch, and all of a sudden you're on the attack. And if you've got a keeper who has, got that vision. I mean, how many goals have Man City scored from Ederson? Just quickly pinging it or just hitting it 40, 50, 60 yards and they're away. It makes a massive difference. And I think with Nick Pope, that's something that he's lacking in. As much as he's a really good shot stopper, he's not very good with his feet and he's not very good with his distribution. And you do question sometimes that this is why it's not top. But in fairness to what Jeannie said there, that could be why Mohamed Ashley hasn't been snapped up already and why they're talking about 20 million euros. Because if that's the case and he is lacking in that department, maybe that's put a lot of suitors off.
Potentially, definitely, but it's going to be an interesting one. I think this is going to move quite a bit because it has to. Like Dubravka, fair play to him, got a clean sheet at the weekend or yesterday. He's got a shoulder injury, not playing well, or hadn't in the previous 3 games before that. It does need to move quickly, and I think a goalkeeper does need to come in sort of as soon as possible. So it has to move quickly. So I'm sure we'll see more names mentioned as we go along. But you mentioned the number 6 position. It'd be crazy not to start with the person that's been linked with the position the most, and it's been really interesting that Calvin Phillips to Newcastle seems to be one that is continuing to be talked about. Ollie Hawkins talked about it as an exclusive. Newcastle move a step closer to signing Calvin Phillips. There is some interest there from Juventus, who have kind of registered an interest in him, but it does seem to be all the talk about Calvin Phillips. And what was really interesting with that is that it looked like for a lot of people that he was kind of saying farewell and goodbye to the Man City fans after his sort of celebration. I think he scored in the Champions League midweek, and it was kind of like that signal to the Man City fans. They thought, and people linked to Man City thought that was him saying goodbye to them. So, from that perspective, is Calvin Phillips your go-to for that number 6 position? Someone to come in, take that position, and make it his own. I know we've talked about him before, but this seems a lot further on than any of the previous times we've had a conversation on Calvin Phillips. So it probably needs maybe a little bit more of a conversation on it. But what are your thoughts with Calvin Phillips, Daz?
Yeah, Calvin Phillips, this has been going on for 2 years talking about him. It's like it's a bit like Madison, Pete. Sorry to bring that up. But no, like I even see Sean Casey on talking about it as well this evening. Yeah, there's an awful lot of talk. Is it all just talk, or is it something done and dusted in the background, and it's just a matter of them rocking up now at the start of January? Interestingly enough, another tweet linked to Sean, I saw they're talking about Emile Smith-Rowe as well. So another player that is injured a bit. So a good player, and 2 years ago, absolutely unreal. But it does kind of sound like the Eddie Howe way as well, bringing players in that are English and trying to nurse them back to where they once were. But yeah, as I said before, with Phillips, for me, it's get him in on loan, and if he does okay and he doesn't get injured when playing regularly first, then I'd consider making it permanent. But apart from that, no.
What I will say is he hasn't really been injured recently for Man City.
Yeah, I know, but he hasn't really been playing either.
Yeah, he just hasn't been playing, and that's the big thing. They haven't played him, and it's really clear that Pep doesn't fancy him. He doesn't fancy him. Doesn't think that he fits in to his style of play, his formation. But Chris, I'll come to you with this. Like, he doesn't fit into what Pep wants, but does that mean ultimately that he doesn't fit into what Eddie Howe wants?
Not necessarily, no. I've just seen a comment there from Life Goals, and I had to Google it because I thought that can't be right. And Life Goals was saying Calvin Phillips was 28. And I was thinking, surely not. But yeah, 28 years old. Like, you know, I think Calvin Phillips could do a job for us. I think if he can regain that form from when he, you know, his first season in the Premier League with Leeds, absolutely. And I think Eddie Howe could get the very best out of him. And just because he's not ready for a superstar Man City team doesn't mean that he's not ready for a Newcastle team, considering where we are at this moment. But you know, is his head going to be right? Is he going to stay fit? Yes, he's got the Premier League experience. Yes, he's not going to have any problem integrating. We know that he's got a home not too far away from Newcastle. So in terms of a temporary move, yeah, brilliant. But is he the long-term answer? Do we want to be paying 40+ million for Calvin Phillips? I don't know. Again, it goes back to the conversation we had about the number one spot. If that is not seen as a priority move, is that your loan? And then you spend your money elsewhere. I must admit, if we went out and spent 30, 40 million on Calvin Phillips, I'd be a bit like, oh, not sure, because you don't quite know what you're going to get with him. But I'm not knocking him. He's not a bad player. And if he came in on a loan deal with the option to buy, maybe it was a reasonable fee, who knows? If he does really well, great, we can sign him in the summer. But I wouldn't be forking out a lot of money on him initially up front. I'd want to see what he's like first and see, you know, where his head's at, so to speak. See if he can regain, you know, that form and see if he is an Eddie Howe type player.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think Juventus will link with something similar, alone with an obligation or an option to buy. I'll be honest with you. I think that would be a really poor move if you would just went and signed Calvin Phillips outright. Like,
yeah,
you've got you have to see him up front and up close and personal. Eddie Howe's going to need to get him fit first and foremost, because he hasn't played a lot of football. He's going to have to get him Eddie Howe fit, which we've already seen that a lot of players have broken down this season off the back of trying to be Eddie Howe fit. Is that going to be the case for him? Hopefully not. But I do think that with his attributes and his abilities, particularly in that defensive midfield slot, I watched him alongside Declan Rice in the Euros, and he was fantastic. Like, he was unplayable at times. And it was a big reason why they went as deep in the competition as they did. And I just think if he can recapture that under Eddie Howe, I think we've got a really, really good player there. And the key is he wouldn't even have to play every game. He'd come in and play moments within games, or certain games he would do really well in. I think a game like, for example, next Saturday, going away to Luton, a team that will work and run their socks off and cause problems, any type of counter-attack, which is what they've been good at this season, is counter-attacking football. Someone like him would just break up play and stop teams from being able to do that and allow us to have the quality, because we've got much better quality than Luton. That's clear and obvious to everybody. It gives us the opportunity to put teams away like that. So Calvin Phillips is kind of the obvious option, but there are others out there. Interestingly, we talked about this before, but Conor Gallagher is being talked about as potential. How should I put it? A potential casualty of necessity for Chelsea in order to recoup money that we're talking about. Potentially, he might well go as early as this January. Now, this is another one, Daz, that's been running on for a long time. We've been linked with Conor Gallagher for a while now, and he hasn't moved. But Chelsea fans have said he's been probably their best midfielder this season in terms of performances. So, look, Chris, I'll kind of reverse and come back to you first on this one. Conor Gallagher, from your perspective, would you take him?
I would take him because I think he's a talented lad, and I think he could bring something to the Newcastle midfield. My only issue is if, as you described, Pete, he's a casualty for Chelsea in terms of them wanting to recoup some money. The price would be a big thing for me. and I don't think we'd be able to get him on loan. I think he would be someone you'd have to pay outright for. And he is very much, I think it's fair to say, Pete, we've said this before, he's very much a London lad. So that spells alarm bells for me, purely because he's rejected moves in the past because he wanted to stay in London. So moving from London to Newcastle, that could take a bit of getting used to. I know it's still the UK, obviously, but, you know, I don't know. When players start rejecting moves because they want to stay in a particular city, that raises alarm bells for me. Because really, let's be honest, footballers don't really live in the same world as you and I, and you know, everybody watching. Yes, they may move away from home, but I'm sure they can just go and buy their mum and their dad and their uncle and their auntie a new house. So the fact that he's chosen not for the football and away from football and reasons, he's chosen to stay in London. That brings in a bit of doubt for me. And also, we're talking 40 million plus for Conor Gallagher. So that also raises a bit of doubt. I would like to bring him in on loan just to see how he fits the system and stuff. But I don't think that's going to be a possibility. So if you said to me, you can have Conor Gallagher for 45 million, me personally, I think I would be looking elsewhere, because you only have to look at our recent signings. You know, Bruno for 38, Tonali for, what was it, 40? Well, no, I think it was rising to 52, wasn't it, or 55? Yeah. So you know, if you offered me one of those two instead of Conor Gallagher, you're picking one of those two every day of the week. So if you're forking out that kind of money, I'd be looking elsewhere, because Chelsea will want a lot of money for him. So that's my thoughts on Gallagher.
That's your opinions on Conor Gallagher?
I've listened to Chris, but I'm also laughing at the Life Goals comments. They're absolutely hilarious here in the chat. For example, he has asked Foxy if he was any relation to Rule Fox, but Foxy did clarify that that he no relation, I think. But interesting.
I think someone
last night as well.
Yeah, I did see.
You were on the chat last night. Yeah, I didn't see that. Conor Gallagher. Yeah, he was very good at Crystal Palace. And I at that point in time, I would have liked us to try and get him in. Hit and miss for me at times at Chelsea as well. And someone makes a good point here as well. That bringing him in now would kind of it would impact the likes of the growth of the players that we have in there already, like Miley and a few more. But I don't know. I like Chris. I wouldn't spend the big money on him if we were getting him at a really cheap price. Yes, but Chelsea want big money, so no, not for me. I think a season or two ago I would have taken him, but not now.
I don't even think we can loan him because we've got Lewis Hall on the loan with an obligation, and I don't think you can get another loan from the same club.
He's playing first team for them though, so
yeah, I think we'd have to. Yeah, we'd probably have to sign him permanently, and like you guys have said, I think someone said in the chat they want 50 million for it, which is just crazy money. Yeah, and not for me. I wouldn't personally be spending that sort of money on getting him.
Look how Mason Mount turned out, Pete.
Exactly. How much did Man United pay for him? Over 60 million. They paid him.
Madness.
Not only has he been injured, when he has played, he's been dreadful. Just like when we knocked them out the Carabao Cup that night, and he played, he was absolutely dreadful. You're taking a big risk with players like that. And look, let's be honest. I've got a bit of a question mark about signing players permanently from teams that are ultimately for the next few years going to be your rivals. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't think it should happen. I think if you're signing someone on a free from there that said that they're not going to sign a new contract and you take advantage of that, that's different. But I don't get the obsession with buying off players from around the teams, because those teams are not going to release those players to you willingly. And if they're releasing those players to you willingly, then you've got to question why they're releasing those players to you. And maybe that's a question for later on in the window when we're having those discussions. But there are other players you could potentially look at. Just a player that I've talked about before, and other people in the chat have mentioned as well. Maxence Coqueret from Lyon, a very, very good, tidy, experienced as well. 23-year-old number 6 for Lyon. Lyon fighting a relegation battle at the moment. Not good, but he is still performing really, really well in that team. And at 23, Lyon are not getting European football this season, or definitely not looking like it at the moment. Can you pay that money to get someone out of there like Maxime Coqueret? Why not? Why not? Why not put a little bit of money down to ensure 23 years old, got his future in front of him, French international, that he's got the pedigree to be a top player and be that. And not just that, he knows Bruno Guimaraes very well because they played in the same midfield together before he came to Newcastle United. So it does make sense to get a deal like that. I'm not saying he's been linked, he hasn't been, but I would love it to be the case off the back of that. But look, we'll move on to we'll leave this one as the final position for tonight, because we can come back to other players that we haven't talked about on another occasion, because this won't be the last time that we're talking about transfers in the next 5 or 6 weeks, that's for sure. So let's go to the right-hand side. And first and foremost, interesting that there were a number of links over the last week or two about the potential of Jacob Murphy leaving the club. Now we asked the question the other night about Miggy, like, would you take a fee from Saudi to kind of move him on, 20, 30, maybe even 40 million? I think the general consensus in the chat that night and with us that we would take that for Miggy if it was that money up front to allow us to go out and spend. But the interesting one was with Jacob Murphy. Now, would we get his brother in replacement to that?
Yeah,
I don't know, but I thought that was a brilliant Christmas.
it was.
Yeah, Christmas fancy dress, dressing up as his brother, even with the shoulder brace as well. I thought that was a nice touch, but just that's crazy to see how different their careers are. I think he's at Oxford United now, and Murphy's been playing Champions League football this season. But on a serious note, the question I've got is that who's out there? Who's out there? So like, there's been no direct links. I've got a few players here that I'll bring up that I think could well be players that we could get in January, that whether it's permanent or other means, and I think are better than what we've got currently, or certainly could be. And the first one we talked about briefly, because we brought it up before, is Nico Williams at Bilbao. His contract, he still hasn't, I believe, signed his contract yet. His contract runs out in the summer. I think he's 23 years old. If anyone's seen the goal that he scored yesterday, wow. Superb finish, right into the top bins. He for me is the Miggy upgrade that you could potentially get on a cheap deal. Now, there is still rumours that he is in negotiations. He could sign a new deal, but with January coming up, there's a chance that if you put enough money down, he could be swayed to leave there, to come to a team that is likely to, in the years to come, play not just regular European football, but Champions League football. Nico Williams would be that guy. And the thing with Nico Williams is he has been looked at by Tottenham and Aston Villa on the back of that. So I don't know how much you guys or people in the chat might know about Nico Williams, but that was just somebody that I threw out there as a potential option. However, one person that I know about, that I'll bring up, that I personally think that we could get in January, whether it happens or not is a different thing, is this man. Rafinha. Now, we've talked about him before. Talented player. How much do you think it would take to get Rafinha out of Barcelona, in your opinions? Daz, I'll come to you with that. How much do you think it could potentially take? Because there are rumours that Barcelona are not necessarily happy with him at the moment and could potentially look to cash in.
Good question. I would, if we're going to go by a top level right winger, I think we're spending our summer transfer budget if we're going down that path. I think it's 50 million at least for Rafinha. But I haven't been monitoring recently. Like, he's absolutely unreal at Leeds, and he started really well at Barca as well. But I haven't seen him recently. But I imagine around the 50 million mark is where your starting point. So it's what age is he now? Probably on, I'm guessing 26.
27, I think. I think he's around 27 mark.
Yeah, 27. He's coming up. His birthday was 3 days ago. He's 27 now. Happy birthday, Rafinha. Yeah, I don't know. I can't see this one happening in January, Pete. For me, it's lower down the pecking order of priorities. If it'd be something like if Barcelona were desperate for cash, which they always are, but getting a deal done with Barcelona for this one, can't see it in January.
Okay, Chris, Rafinha, talk to me. What your thoughts?
Yeah, we spoke about this recently, the Pete, and Rafinha's been linked a hell of a lot over the past 6 to 12 months. But for me, he's probably the closest thing to like a Riyad Mahrez. He guarantees you goals if he plays in that right wing position. And bearing in mind he's Premier League experienced, no doubt he can speak some sort of English. I think he would be a fantastic sign. And I was just checking then, and you're absolutely right, boys. Yeah, 27, day after me, he's born. But yeah, at 27 years old, he signed for Barcelona for 50 million, rising to 55. And I'm thinking Barcelona probably need to shed a bit of money off the wage bill. I can't imagine there would be a whole host of clubs going for Rafinha purely because of his value or his price. But I think we could tempt Barcelona with something in the region of 40 to 45 million, I think, because I don't think he's actually had a very good season so far. Anyone in the chat, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he's set the world alight this season. And I think if you put the hard cash down on the table, I think Barcelona might be tempted to cash in, because no doubt they've probably got their eye on some other wonder kid that maybe they want to bring in. And obviously they've got Ferran Torres as well, haven't they? So it would be interesting to see if they would be willing to part with someone like Rafinha, especially if he's not hit the ground running this season like they'd hoped. But no, he would be a massive upgrade. And to answer your initial question, Pete, if you were to ask me, do I want to sacrifice a Miggy Almiron or a Jacob Murphy for someone like Rafinha, you do it all day, every day.
Chris, one here for you as well, from Life Goals, a suggestion.
I mean, Life Goals knows how we all feel about Mahrez. Mahrez is just brilliant. But yeah, Rafinha's like a younger Mahrez for me. I still think he's got some way to go to catch Mahrez. But yeah, Mahrez would be brilliant. Mahrez on loan would be absolutely phenomenal. I just wish he was like 5 years younger and, was dying to come and join Newcastle. But neither of those are probably true, I'd imagine. But yeah, Mahrez, great player.
Yeah, definitely. I've permanently kept away from the Saudi players for a reason. Just because I'm sure we'll do a separate show on them at some point, as we're building on who we can pick in. And we did cover them when we initially talked about it before. Another player that's really exciting before we get to lots of questions, and I know there's lots of comments and questions in the chat, so we'll come to that just now. But a player that some people will know, FC Copenhagen's Rooney young 18-year-old scored the winner, I believe, against Man United in Champions League. But right winger, huge potential. Is he better than Miguel Almiron now? No, but could he be? For sure. Now, two things there. is his potential. Newcastle like to sign young players. I don't think we always need to sign young players, but he's a young player there. We've got massive potential. And I don't believe you are paying a huge amount of money to get him
Let the dogs out.
FC Copenhagen. I think somebody's dog doesn't like the fact that Rooney Badaja might come to Newcastle United, but I like the thought of that, and I don't think you're paying any more than 15-20 million to get him out of FC Copenhagen. In my opinion, I don't think that would be the case. But what are your thoughts about that? And have you boys been able to see anything of him and any little bits of him this season?
I know he scored the goal against Man United, and then I did tune in to watch the Copenhagen game, and he wasn't playing. But he's on my hit list on Football Manager. He turned me down in the summer, but I'm going to go back in for him in January because he'd suit what I'm trying to build. But yeah, I haven't really seen him. I haven't really seen him in real life so much yet. But a lot of good things about him, I hear.
Same, Chris, in terms of what you've seen from him.
Yeah, a little bit similar to Mohamed Ashley, to be honest. Seen clips of him, and he's looked very good. And yeah, as like you said, I've seen the goal against Man United, but I've not scouted him extensively. Normally, I don't do that until like there's real strong links, and then it's like, ooh, let's have a proper watch. And when I've got a bit of spare time, I might watch one of the games and whatnot that they're playing in. But no, I've not got to him yet. But from obviously what people are saying, he sounds like a real prospect, and obviously playing Champions League football at such a young age, the ceiling's probably ridiculously high. And you're absolutely right, Pete, when you say he's probably not at the level of a Miggy Almiron at the moment, but that's not to say that he can't, reach that level and then go way beyond it, especially due to his age.
Definitely. I'd love to sign someone like that. I'm in two minds though, purely because of that. I talk about the age thing. I do think we need to sign ready-made players in certain positions. I would probably say right wing may well be one of them, along with the striker position, is where you'd want an experienced, ready-to-go player. But actually, looking from this position, I actually think that if you look at Miggy and Murphy, neither have a long-term future. So you could potentially have Rooney Badaja and a ready-to-go right winger potentially come in over the next year or two. And then you've got those players to basically transition into your two new right wingers that could take you forward, with maybe even a Murphy, because his contract's not out until 2027, I believe. As a backup third option. So you could potentially do it that way. So there's lots to kind of look in there. Fox has just put a question in about would anyone take Noni Madueke? He signed for Chelsea last season, last January, I believe, and I did watch him at Stamford Bridge, and he was probably their best player on that day, but just hasn't really kicked on since he signed for them. So I'm not sure whether that's a little bit of Chelsea destroying him, or whether he's just not really found his level. Isn't the Premier League at this moment in time. But one player that I would sign from PSV, who can play in that position, is Johan Bakayoko. He has got massive potential there. I'm not going to talk about it too much. If you're going from PSV, he's a guy that I would definitely look for, but I've got a feeling he's going to cost a pretty penny to get out of there, because he is a talented player. But they were just some players in those positions. No real links there with those particular players, but players that we'd highlighted in a needful position, but we'll definitely keep an eye out for if any of those links do pop along. And if there are other players, and you guys have been, guys and girls have been brilliant in the chat, putting out other players that we've kind of noticed, then get involved and throw those names in, because the more shows we do, we are going to touch on these. And if they pop up again and there's a true link, this is where we go to town and look in a bit more detail. But that's one thing. I do apologize. Initially, I made a mistake. Here is the proper table for the NUFC Women's League. They are 5 points.
Hey,
They are
Thought
there.
we were
My
doing
bad.
better than that, all right.
I got last season's table. I made. I think it wasn't even the full table, but I made a mistake on last season's table, so I apologize. But yes,
Nice.
they are top of the league. So there we go. Sorry, Daz. Crack on, fella.
No, nice one. Right, so yeah, there's a few comments and questions in the chat. Samsonite has given the thumbs up on the Rooney. He's a Danish connection there, so that's nice to hear as well. Thanks for that, Samsonite. Right, some questions. So there's a lot of questions and comments here. We will circle back around to get your story as well, Chris. So we'll get that going. From Captain Kefhard first, are the likes of Hendrik, Fraser, Lewis, and Hayden still on our books? Yes, unfortunately, they are. We're still stuck with them for the time being, unless that changes in January. Next question. Yeah, Rowan asks about Eki Teki. Do you think that player might be Eki Teki? He was linked with the club for being able to play across that front three. I think it was linking back to when you were describing a player, Chris, that could play up front or kind of on the wing.
I can see why they've gone for him, but I think it's fair to say that when Ekitike knocked us back, that's why we went in for Isak. But I think he was probably the Isak player. I think. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think he's probably burnt his bridges. I think he's probably a player that the scouts would obviously admire and still class as a really good player. But I think, you know, you kind of only get one chance at this, and his attitude has been questionable since he's been at PSG, which was his dream club. So if it doesn't quite go his way at Newcastle, how's he going to be out there? He's probably going to be even worse, isn't he?
Yeah. We'll move on from that one. Question from Jimmy: if we were to get a goalkeeper in, would you sell Dubravka in January?
I'd have sold him last January. Yeah, I'd have sold him last January. So yeah, he had his chance. He blew it. I'll get behind him when he puts on the shirt and he steps on St James's Park, or when he plays for Newcastle United. I'll get behind him. But yeah, like we've moved on from Dubravka. For me, he's not good enough, and I'm quite happy to die on that hill and continue to say that.
Yeah, sticking with the goalies, Sean says the three we talked, well, two we talked about, and De Gea. There was a lot of talk about De Gea as well. What wages he would command. He's nowhere now. I suppose he's no club. But then Life Goals, who was throwing out loads of questions on loads of different topics, but he asks about the Irish goalkeeper Kelleher at Liverpool. I can't see Liverpool letting him go too easily, but he's a good keeper. I haven't seen an awful lot of him, but he is a decent keeper. Unless anyone else knows more about him.
He looked very good last season, but when he's made a couple of appearances this season, he has looked shaky. And I noticed that Alisson was meant to be out for a long period of time, and then they rushed him back, and now he's back. Whereas apparently he was meant to be out for a good few weeks, and I wonder whether that's because Kelleher maybe there's not full confidence in Kelleher. So I'm not 100% sure, and I certainly wouldn't think he's number one material, if I'm honest.
Right, Jay talks about, he goes, guys, I'm from Scotland, and I know the Scottish League isn't the best, but Jack Butland has been Rangers' best player this season. I'm sure he's on loan, even get him for 6 months until the summer.
Not for me.
Yeah, it didn't work out for him, but was he at Man United for a while as well? For like a third keeper or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's who didn't they get him in when Dubravka got moved back?
Yes, that was it. Yeah. No, I think
he was once rated quite highly, wasn't he, back in the day? But his career's kind of took a bit of a nosedive, really.
It wasn't his fault. Stoke refused to negotiate for him. So when they went down, so many teams went in for Jack Butland and tried to get him, and Stoke. Obviously, because they assumed they would come straight back up, they put unrealistic transfer figures on his head. and he wanted to go, but he always said that he would never force a move. So he was happy to leave, but no team came back with the money that Stoke wanted. And I think the only reason he left Stoke was because his contract was running out. That was the only reason he was able to go. But by then, he'd spent 2-3 years of his career languishing in the Championship because obviously their team got decimated and they are where they are now. So partly that is down to the Stoke as the club, not necessarily him.
He ended up on Palace, didn't he? Did he go to Palace on loan? It was a weird loan deal or something, so they didn't get hardly any money for him. I think they burnt the bridges at that point. Again, I think they stung themselves in the.
Sticking with the goalies, Matt says, if we were to bring Ramsdale in on loan and we were to sell Dubravka, then who's in goal for when we play Arsenal? Good point. People also added in, I think, as well, if we got Arsenal in the cup then or something as well, who would be in goals? But yeah, look, let's worry about that if we were to get Ramsdale and sell Dubravka. Too many if buts and maybes there at the moment. Life Goals mentions Adam Wharton from Blackburn, and he says he's got a release clause of 18.5 million. Good defensive midfielder as well, coming through the ranks. Don't know an awful lot about him. Again, a Football Manager. I've seen his name there as well.
I've only seen a couple of goals that he scored. He's scored a couple of decent goals for Blackburn, but I've not seen enough of him really. I've heard there's a lad that I work with who's a mad Blackburn fan, and he bigs him up big time. But I've just not seen enough from him.
I did watch a Blackburn game, and yeah, he didn't shine for me when the part of the game I saw. I was just keeping an eye out for him. Question for you, Pete: are you ready?
Oh,
are
sorry,
you ready for
Lawless?
Are you ready for Lawless tomorrow?
I'm born ready. To be fair, we've moved on from that. 3 points in the bag against Fulham. I think I've got to be honest. I think most of the talk will be about Man United getting a point at Liverpool. I think we had a poll out and we had 7s, 8s, 4s, 3-0s to Liverpool and end up being 0-0 and they sneak a point. So I'll be honest. I think maybe Errol will be getting some penalties, and of course LB. Getting some penalties from Man City, so I'm not being. I think LB may deflect towards us. You know what he feels about Newcastle United. He'll try and deflect towards us, but
that's if he turns up. So one man that will turn up is D. As we turn our attention to, it's not on that one actually. He's on another. He might appear as he does now and again. But Elise from Palace as a right winger, someone you consider?
Yeah, I would.
The price is right.
I think he's getting better now. I think he's getting better. To be fair, he signed a new contract. It baffles me. It baffles me. Like, someone just put Nico Williams has signed a new contract as well, but only just as in last few days. I think he signed a new contract to 2027. Like, those moves baffle me. Unless they've got release clauses set in their contracts, they baffle me because Elise is better than Palace. I'm sorry, he just is. He is ready for maybe not a Chelsea because I think they're probably ruining, but he's ready to come and play European football at someone like Newcastle. Like, he's ready for that now. We had the question about Brennan Johnson. Someone was talking about Brennan Johnson. I'd have Elise over Brennan Johnson. His dead ball ability is superb. I just baffles me signing a new contract because the Palace are going to command crazy money to get him out there. It's going to be another Louis Saha situation. No, not Louis Saha. He's a striker. Wilfred Zaha. It's another Wilfred Zaha situation. Wilfred Zaha ended up going on a free to Turkey because Palace refused to sell him. Like, it's literally going to be another situation for Elise unless he's got a clause in his contract, which I just think's. Yeah, I don't get it.
Life goals fresh from getting the knockback from Foxy on the Rule Fox connection. He followed that up asking Bill Ashby whether he was any relation to Harrison Ashby. And Bill clarified no, that he doesn't think he is. But interesting one in the chat. So who will Life goals go after next? Briz Gate asked the question. Asher has said that we need to trade to compete. So who might leave in January? Chris.
$1 million question. I do believe someone may leave in January, but I think there's more likelihood of a player leaving in the summer or players leaving in the summer. Only if we get a very reasonable or high offer for one of our players can I see them leaving in January, because obviously it's such a short window. Unless the deal's been pre-agreed, I would be very surprised if someone came in the third week of January with an offer for the player. But then I said this when Chris Wood and John Joe Shelby got sold, didn't I? So, maybe some players, some clubs will panic, come in for the big deal, and we'll go, yeah, just get rid, and we'll sort it out in the summer. That could be the case. In terms of who I think's most likely, subject to injury, I think Miggy Almiron, I think Jacob Murphy, I think Joe Willock, which we spoke about before, Jamal Lascelles, Martin Dubravka, someone like that, I would say.
I don't know. I think you've covered the bases there. Anyone else you'd throw in that pile, Pete?
No. I think Chris has covered them all, to be fair.
Cool. JB and UFC suggests Palacios from Leverkusen. But the thing is, with Leverkusen, they're top of the German league, and they have a long list of players that are very, very good. You could name about 5 or 6 that would slot in at Newcastle. But
Jonathan Carr's been linked. He's been linked with Newcastle earlier on, centre back. But he's also been linked with Chelsea as well. Why Chelsea? Why would you go to Chelsea right now? Jesus Christ. But he has been linked to only 20 million as well. Not a huge fee. I'm not sure if that's contract related. I haven't looked at his contract, but I think it was only 20 million. So he's maybe the one that might go. Nobody else though.
Yeah, no, I think they'll try and keep their squad together for the summer, and then there'll be vultures will come swooping all over the place for some of their players. Yeah, Chris, did you want to ask a question earlier? I think one you want to bring up.
Yeah, do you know what? I wanted to ask you about Lewis Hall, because I know, and you may have talked about this, and apologies if you have, lads, but when Eddie Howe was asked at the press conference about Lewis Hall, and he was like, is he definitely signing, kind of thing, and he was just like, no, and I was just a bit like, oh, okay. And I just wondered. I mean, we've had this injury crisis, haven't we? And we've struggled and whatever. And it feels to me like we've done everything we possibly can not to play him. And any minutes that he does get, or when he does start, he's very quickly shifted off the pitch. And we saw him have that fantastic game against Man United. We saw him struggle against Man City when he was played in the midfield. But do you boys believe that Lewis Hall is going to be a Newcastle player come the end of the season, or do you think that it's looking more likely that he won't be?
I don't know. I would have thought definitely yes up until that, but he even in the press conference, and you can see the body language where he's asked the question. It was Jordan and Dom that were asking the two best questions on the day there at that press conference, and he kind of turns and asks, "Can he what he can say?" And he was kind of very sketchy on how he answered it. I still think though he's going to come good, and we're going to keep him.
I think he signs. I'll be honest with you. I don't think it would be good luck if we sign somebody, barely play them, and let them go back to their parent club. I don't think it's a good look for Newcastle if we do that. I think we've trusted this. We've convinced this player to not sign a long-term contract at Chelsea and to come to us. And then if we don't show him a pathway of where he could be a first-team player, I'm not saying he should be first choice, playing every week. If we don't allow him to have at least a pathway to play some type of regular football this season, or certainly don't give him the vision of the pathway that he could be in the next 2 or 3 years, a first-team regular, I think we would have made a big mistake. Yes, he hasn't been convincing in some of the games that he's played. He was very, very good at Old Trafford, in the cup, in the Carabao Cup, when he got his goal. And I think he's got lots of attributes in his game that could make him into a top fullback. I think the injuries haven't helped him. I think there's an element of Eddie Howe not wanting to throw him in the deep end. I think he did that away at Dortmund, and that's why he got dragged at half-time. I think he struggled. I think he really struggled in that game. And I think there's a little bit of maturity that he needs to add to his game. I think he benefits from playing cup games. Or if it wasn't against Chelsea, he would have played on Tuesday. Tuesday coming, and he would have played in there. So these were games that he would have played in, like he did at Old Trafford, but he can't because of his loan situation. But I think what he'll do now, he'll be exposed to other games. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays minutes in the derby. I wouldn't. I think he'll get minutes between now and the end of the season, but I think they're being very particular on where they play him in his minutes. And he only has to look at Tino Livramento as someone to look up to. Tino was, again, not really being played. I mean, he didn't even come off the bench against Wolves, for God's sake, and look at what he's doing now. But when he gets his opportunity, when Eddie Howe feels that he's ready, he will play him, and we will see the best of Lewis Hall. Lewis Hall isn't just a signing for now, it's a signing for the future, and we have to show him the pathway. For us to let him go and he potentially go back to Chelsea and absolutely tear it up, which he's got the potential of doing. Remember the reaction of the Chelsea fans when we got that deal done? They went mad. They were kicking off. They wanted Cucurella out the door as quick as anything, and to keep Lewis Hall. The reaction after that press conference from all the Chelsea accounts, they're excited about the fact of having him back. We should take that as a sign that we shouldn't be letting this lad go easy. We need to keep hold of him, in my opinion. I really, really do.
Foxy makes a good point here as well about, and I know you mentioned it as well, Pete, about renegotiation the Hall deal. Bring his value down low enough so that we can renegotiate.
I think I might have said it to you boys in our chat. I think I said it. I said it would be a smart move. Whether Chelsea would go for it or not, it's a big risk. Chelsea might go, actually, nah, we'll take him back. If you don't want to pay the money, we'll take him. And they might just do that. But the renegotiation, Chelsea still win. They'll get money from him, maybe not the huge amount that they're after, the 28 million, or is it a 28 million that will be paid over a period of time that makes the deal more favourable to us? So it's now an initial payment of like a little bit like Joe Willock, 5 million per window, rather than an upfront payment of. Is there a scope to do that? Who knows? But you've got to then remember that he has to want to sign for us. And if he turns around in the season and said, "Well, you didn't play me," you said you played me, you didn't. He might turn around and go, "Well, you know what? I wanted to play for the club, but you didn't show me the pathway. I'll go back to Chelsea."
You can't blame him if he did that.
Could be that, but I want him to stay for sure.
Could be an interesting one for January, couldn't it? In terms of, like you say the clause is 20, maybe not 20. Say the clause is 10 starts, and we go to Chelsea in January and go, I know we've got 30 million agreed. What if we give you 22 million? Because he's not quite kicked on as much as we thought he would. We'll give you 22 million now, and we'll deal now. We'll sort the deal now, and we'll give you 8 million right now if you do the deal at 28 million. 22 million. It could be something like that, couldn't it? And I think the club know that Chelsea are desperate for money. So Chelsea are even considering getting rid of Gallagher. So maybe, because obviously if Lewis Hall was starting every single game, Chelsea would turn around and go, no, we'll have the 30 million. But the fact that we're being so cautious with him, could they go, well, do you know what, he's not been brilliant. We still want to sign him, but maybe. And then if Chelsea say no, like you say, Pete, we could just turn around and go, Sam, we'll just make sure the clause is activated before the end of the season. Cheers.
Yeah.
Could do that.
Yeah. Just to add in there, after the press conference, obviously there was a lot of talk about the whole comment that obviously that we're talking about. But very quickly, a few of the journalists did put out a story to say that Newcastle have said that that they want to keep him permanently. So that came out not long after.
Right,
So it wouldn't surprise me if they've gone, oh, have we, from the initial reaction to what Eddie Howe said, if they've gone, oh, have we made a mistake here? Have we said something that doesn't quite look right? And they've maybe gone back, because the journalists get the video version of the press conference, but then Eddie Howe goes and does the paper version. And that's where the journalists traditionally tend to get a lot of their additional information, not in like the press conference that we see when it pops up on Sky Sports News, for example. Like that's the actual press conference. But then when the papers go and have their conversation and they do it all written,
yeah,
that's where a lot of the managers, not just Eddie Howe, but managers in general, divulge a lot of their information. So it wouldn't surprise me if some of the paper journalists have gone back with that question and then they've had to firm up the answer and say, no, we want to sign him permanently, to try and cover that over. Or maybe they've recognised that they've maybe been a little bit too vague and actually they do want to keep him, so they've just kind of made more of a solid stance. I don't know, but that's what kind of came out about an hour or two after the press conference.
It did come across very negative, I thought. I did think it came across negative. But that was just a feeling.
Life Goals has a sort. I mean, his offer is about 1 million every year of Hawes' life, and a further 1 million on each subsequent birthday while he's with Newcastle. So that's 19 million up front, and if he stays for 16 years, that could be 35 million.
Maybe.
Never know. Life Goals. You're on one this evening.
Maybe.
Yeah, there was one or two other questions. This one, in favor, if we started talking about fully loaded transfer, the first one I mentioned, this guy Benjamin Sissoko. He is one I'd love us to go back in for, or to go for. But yeah, he's class. I don't know if we'd have the budget for that. Maybe in the summer. Who knows?
Yeah, it's a good one.
That's more or less it for the questions. There's still a few, but I think we've done plenty of questions now, lads. At this stage, there was one for you, Chris. Actually, there was one. Actually, let's bring it up again, and we'll finish on that one. As I said, we do it from Leon, and some stuff. And Pete gave a kind of a bit of a rundown on how we became Newcastle fans. But over to you.
Well, mine won't be as interesting as yours, boys. But yeah, I became a Newcastle fan because my dad's from Newcastle and all my dad's side are from Newcastle. So I don't really think I had the choice, to be honest. So I was black and white as soon as I was born. And yeah, brought up in Liverpool because my dad moved from Newcastle to Liverpool when he was about 17, 18. And then he met me mum in Liverpool, and she'd moved from Manchester when she was about 7 or 8. So I'm a bit of a hybrid. I've got Liverpool, Manc, and Newcastle. But yeah, I support Newcastle because my dad supports Newcastle and he's from Newcastle. And that's why I support Newcastle.
You were right, Chris. Boring.
Boring. It is boring, isn't it? It is, because when you support Newcastle, tell me, and they go, oh, your dad supports Newcastle. Yeah, that's it. Well, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, good to hear the background on that. I think we'll bring it to a close, lads. What do you think? We are back. If I switch over the tab here, we are back on Tuesday, unless something else happens tomorrow. But we are back on Tuesday for the watch along. So I think it's currently down on 7:30. My time may change again. We'll keep an eye out on Twitter or on YouTube. But hit that notification bell, and you'll see the exact time. But yeah, for a watch along, join us for that. The Carabao Cup. Watch along, Chelsea versus Newcastle. So it should be a good one, and we've got a good track record so far in that one. So hopefully that continues.
Yeah, that'd be a good game.
that's it. So I think thanks everyone for giving up their Sunday evening to listen to us talk about transfers. We will be back. Don't worry, in January we'll be talking nothing but transfers, ingoings, outgoings, rumors, potentials, guests flying in from near here, there, everywhere, dropping in to say hello and getting the latest. But there's a lot to happen before then as well. Guess is the case then of how'd you like that? Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.